Yeah, I went on this whole very personal journey with, okay, who is God and what does that mean? And I would, in my own practice, even in like my self-love and sensual practice, I would, make love to God and like be in this practice of just like receiving the divine through my body and what that felt like, instead of fantasizing about like another guy or this other guy or any guy. I would be like, I just want to feel the presence of God. I've never experienced that.
You're listening to The Madeline Moon Show, the podcast that will show you how to become masterful at making art out of love, life, and everything that comes your way. Today, we're speaking with the one and only Chelsey Jo Huntsman, who is a mentor, transformational artist, writer, somatic facilitator, and she who is in service to ecstatic love, eros, and expression in all things. Hi, my love.
Hi.
It's so good to have you here in the studio. Welcome. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh my gosh. It's such an honor. It's such a treat. I have taken a little bit of time away from the podcast because I wanted a little bit of space to go through some life things.
Yeah.
Let those life things kind of settle. And then when I knew you were coming into town, I was like, oh, wow. I wasn't quite sure when I was going to like come back in, but hearing that you were here, I was like, and now we're coming back in because I need to have her on my podcast.
Yeah. And I feel like this is the perfect way to drop in. It's like, oh, we could sit and have tea and talk, but we can also just let people in on the talk.
Exactly. We can also broadcast all the tea ever. All of it. Yeah.
Most of it.
Most of it. Yeah. Maybe not all of it. A little bit of some context to this human, some context to this amazing human. I don't remember the exact time I was introduced to you and your work. We're in the same kind of field, mostly. But I remember finding you and being like, who is this sparkly being? Who is this radiant woman? Because you're so much woman,
Thank you.
Every woman has woman in her. But like you have, what a woman. You have so much womanness in you. Woman. And I see that. I see your artistry. I see your, like, the creativity, the birthing, the fullness, the, like, way that you move with your body, like, very intentionally, all of that. And Chelsey thought I had a bot on Instagram because I would follow her and then unfollow and then follow and then unfollow and follow. Because I was like, I want to be in this woman's world, but we're so like,
yeah.
It was like,
oh, I know that one.
You know the feeling.
When I totally.
It's not that there was any triggering. Some people you follow and unfollow because you like and then don't like them. I was unfollowing you because I was like, she just wrote the thing that I could have written. And it felt like it was coming, but it wasn't because she said it. It was like so close to home.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. And also it's like my whatever muse I'm like in communion with is very similar to what she's in communion with. So yeah, that was what was going on there. But then I got to spend time with you in France.
Yeah.
When we went on a Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. And that's where I really got to experience your your how you observe spaces and also move through spaces with your personality and your spunk and your play and your artistry and your humility, and getting to hear you and your beloved Oren's story also on that like close, intimate level for me to be able to hear some things about y'all's relationship was so precious to me.
Yeah.
You're so special.
Yeah. You mean a lot to me too.
Yeah.
I totally know that feeling. I don't follow anyone on Instagram.
Yeah, you follow
for that
like 3
reason.
people.
Yeah.
Including your partner.
Yeah.
And somebody who's not promoting anything.
Yeah.
Someone you love.
Yeah.
Right? Your sister?
It's my sister and my best friend.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My partner.
Oh.
Yeah. And I know that because you're right. I would tune into you and be like, I love her so much. And then I'd be like, whoa, we're so channeling so much of the same thing. And I love that. And I knew so many of our friends would be like, once you two meet, I was like, oh, we're going to get down. We're going to get down.
I was reading your bio before this, and I was like, this is my bio. It was like all the same thing. Somatic Facilitator, Transformational Teacher, Mentor, Ecstatic Love, and Eros.
Yeah, we love all the same things.
I know. It's really special. Yeah. It's like soul sister, soulmate.
Yeah.
Soulmate. Okay, so I want to start this off with a story. This is a new thing I want to do on the show because I love storytelling, and like I have a lot of stories I want to share, and I know guests have a lot of great stories that are like funny stories, and I want to hear a funny story from you. Can you gift us with a funny story?
Ooh. Okay, so funny / just deep, wild. How about that?
The best.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
No pressure to laugh.
Yeah. I feel like this will be. It's one of the things, you know, when you asked me, I was like, I haven't dated for almost 10 years, which is so funny to feel into like how long it's been for me to date. But when I went through my last breakup, which was 4 years ago now, I went through a transition. And I just remember I'd been in a relationship. I was engaged. I was in a relationship for 5 years. And I remember kind of coming out of that and feeling like a little bit like a wild animal. Like I'd been let out of a cage. Like, who am I? How am I? I didn't even remember how to be with men and how to respond to men and like engage with them. And so I would say like the first kind of crush that I had, the first guy that I made out with after 5 years of being in the same relationship, kissing the same person, having sex with the same person, I just remember feeling like a little girl afterwards. Like we had the most delicious, primal, intense, heated like makeout session, and I was choosing to be celibate during this time, so we didn't make love or have sex. But I remember afterwards feeling like I was in high school again. And I became like obsessed, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's he doing? Is he gonna text me? Yeah. And I was like, what is this? Like, I thought that I had healed this part of myself, you know? And he was really clear with me when we made out that he was not available for a relationship and he wasn't wanting that. And I was really feeling this, like, it was an interesting thing. Almost just the rejection made me want him even more. And so I remember a couple of weeks later, we were all at a party together, and he and I had a clear conversation that we weren't going to continue making out or like having moments like that because it wasn't feeling right. It wasn't feeling right. And I took maybe just a little bit of mushrooms. A little bit of mushrooms. And we were like all sitting in this hot tub together, and I was like sitting next to him and another woman, and he starts making out with this other girl right next to me. And I'm like kind of tripping, freaking out, feeling all the feels. I'm like, what? You know, I felt like I was back in high school. Like my heart was like breaking, but simultaneously I was like, what is this? He takes her out of the hot tub. They go into his room, and I'm I'm trying to hold it together. Like there's like other people around, and I'm like, don't cry, Chelsey. Just don't cry right now. So I like get in my car and go home and get in my bed. I'm like, I'm totally fine to drive. It was just like a microdose, but just enough that it was still moving me. Yeah. And I get in my bed and I'm like, what is this? Like, what is this thing? Because it's not this guy. I don't really like this guy. I know that I'm not going to be with this guy. He's not my person. He's not my partner. He's not somebody that I would even want to be with. But like, what is this? And I could just feel this space. The little bit of psilocybin was like really doing some beautiful work. And I was like, all right, let's go there. And I just allowed myself to go like straight into the womb and feel this sensation and this core wound of not being wanted. Because when I go all the way back into when my mom got pregnant with me, I was an accident, you know, and my dad didn't want me. My mom didn't want me. And I just like went all the way back. And I could feel this place in me that has always come up against this rejection. So whether it was this guy or someone else, and I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. I cried myself to sleep that night. But I remember waking up the next morning and being like, whatever that was, something viscerally shifted inside of me. And I wasn't attracted to him anymore after that. I would see him out and I was like, oh, wow, it's you. I feel different with you now. I'm not feeling this like need to make you love me or like want me. And yeah, so that to me it was like we weren't dating, but that was the last time that I feel like I had a moment before. It was a few months before I met Oren where I was like in this kind of like who am I? And I feel like there's so many times like that in relationship or relational experiences where we're like, I thought I've healed this.
Yeah.
Like this daddy wound. Oh, wow, this is still here? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to do. And I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that. Probably someone's resonating with that happening right now in their life and having gone through it. And what I find for myself is that I have, with specific archetypes of men, I will have a similar flavor come back pretty consistently.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like not a warning sign, but it's like that's now become a muscle just like anything else. When that muscle starts to get activated, I just have awareness around it. Like, oh, I call it the projection screen. Like that's what a crush is.
Yeah.
A crush, quite literally, is the process of having a projection screen, like a movie screen that you were watching. You were creating this entire fantasy and story, and you're just watching it on the big screen. You're cozy. Maybe you took a little bit of mushy mush, but you're watching it. You're tripping out. You're like, this is the most amazing thing that ever could have happened. Now it must happen. Yeah. It must come to life. And like that vision becomes like, it feels like almost like a limb, and and when you're not fulfilling that, or it's not coming to life, or you're in the tension of the space, right? Because oftentimes it's the space. It's the space that creates the screen.
Yeah.
So when we have space, like I notice too in myself, when I start to have moments of longing and worthiness will come up, or am I good enough will come up, or whatever story may be arising, it's always because there's space.
Yeah.
It's like the space
in between.
The space in between, not talking for a while, or like physical distance. And there's a desire to like fill the space with the projection.
Whew.
This happens in relationship too. You don't receive a response quick enough in a text message.
Yep.
After you said something vulnerable or you said something clear.
Yep.
And then in the space is when you have all the stories that come up.
Yep.
So
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that story. Do you find sometimes when you do a little mushy and you go home and you just don't try to go to bed, instead you go to like the altar space, that like deep work starts to happen?
I feel like I've learned at this point with that medicine in particular, there's going to be something that moves inside of me. Even if I'm at a party, or it's just, for me, it's like there's always at some point in the night, something's going to like shift. Yeah. And it could be really beautiful, or it's just like, oh, we're doing some work right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I rarely will just pop to bed.
Yeah. I feel like when you take that medicine, it's like, the way that I interpret it is little mushrooms / little like beings, because it's a being, it's a life force that you're bringing into your body. It's a consciousness you're bringing into your body.
Yeah.
But that consciousness, I always feel like it's trickstery, gnome-like.
Yeah.
Like
actually just can so see the way that you see them. I'm like getting the visual.
I feel like I have all these gnomes that are like filling my body, and then they're just going to work on things, Like they're bringing things to the surface. There's stuff that happens in the belly. There's the thoughts that happen. I feel like I need to pee, but I don't actually need to pee. I get in my head, but it's all like in service of the mirror.
Exactly.
It's all in service of the mirror. So it's such special.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like whatever's happening in the body, it's going to really surface if you haven't been fully present with it, I feel like. Yeah.
One of the things, there's several threads here of intrigue to speak with you about. I think your relationship with your beloved is something that's so beautiful, and like, it would be not a waste, but it would almost be a waste to have you here and not like bring that transmission to the podcast, because it's so, you and Oren are one of those couples that are really embodying the work as a unit, in union. And it's the work, yes. It's also the artistry. It's also the transmission. It's the grace. It's the flow. It's not just the work.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear perhaps just a little bit about the genesis of y'all's creation of this relationship. So maybe that's like the meeting story, or it's like what you got really clear about before he came into your life, or like what it was like if there was a bumpy moment at the beginning. Just a little bit on the genesis, whatever feels like it's the most alive for you to share.
I love the word genesis. Thank you. Yeah, he and I use that word a lot.
Oh,
so you're totally.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I was on my journey where I went through that whole story that I just shared, I was very intentionally celibate. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be celibate for this long or this amount of time. It was just, I could really feel that my womb was asking to be cleared and to really feel myself, like to know my energetic field, to know who I was. Because for so many years I'd been in relationship or, you know, allowing men to be inside of me in some way or another. And it was like there was this deep re-templatizing that was happening of just really asking, what is my relationship with the masculine? And this is like a really common, I think it's a bigger theme now, but for me during that time, I was really remembering my relationship with God. And because for so long before that, I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't know if I believed in God. And I could feel how there was a moment that I was in so much grief and pain from the previous relationship and breakup and heartbreak and all the things that happened, you know. He met someone right away and it was just like so many things were happening. And I just remember falling to my knees and being like, I can't hold this. And for the first time in probably 20 years, praying to God, like praying to God. And it was such a primal, innate, I didn't think about it kind of thing. And like through that, I just spent many months just being with God, like show me who you are. Because what I was taught and what I learned and what I knew from religion, growing up Mormon, all these things, it was just like whatever that God was, I didn't feel safe with. I didn't feel connected to. And feeling very much through that, there was like a really negative imprint on the father and the masculine. And so, yeah, I went on this whole very personal journey with, okay, who is God and what does that mean? And I would, in my own practice, even in like my self-love and sensual practice, I would, you know, make love to God and like be in this practice of just like receiving the divine through my body and what that felt like, instead of fantasizing about like another guy or this other guy or any guy. I would be like, I just want to feel the presence of God. I've never experienced that. I never considered making love. It was always fucking. And so I was really just re-templatizing this whole experience. And it was a pretty natural, organic thing that happened. And so by the time that I met Oren, I feel like it was almost like he was familiar to me. Like I had been preparing my body and my heart and my womb for him, because when I met Oren, and I think this is the thing that, you know, when I even think about him, I get emotional. I've never met a man that brought me closer to God or that helped me believe in God more. And there was something so familiar about him when I met him. I was like, oh, I've been working with you, haven't I? Oh, we've been dancing together. We've been preparing for one another. And he went on a really similar journey where he was just very much like, what would it be like for me to be entirely myself in a relationship where I could just fully be me? I didn't have to explain myself or have all these like, you know, processes. I think that was like a big thing for both of us in our previous partnerships. We processed a lot. And it was like, what would it feel like to be in a relationship that is more joyful and easeful and beautiful, but to feel that, to move some of those things through in our bodies. And I feel like that's another element, is that sometimes we have to go through those karmic, denser, really deep ones to get to like the very beautiful. I mean, it's necessary. We have to process the karma before we can come into more of the, I think you call it dharmic relationships. Have I seen you talk about that?
Yeah, I've talked about that.
I've really loved that, like the karmic to the dharmic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it is the karmic relationships that push you so completely to the brink of your somatic existence. And it's that friction that finally paves way for you being free from the karma.
Yeah.
Because you have to do something. It's literally the friction's creating fire. And I think karma can either force you to collapse in on yourself or expand outward.
Yeah.
And it brings, it like, the intensity will bring you face to face with the choice of, do I choose this?
Yeah.
Or am I complete? And sometimes that there's a gray area that you're in for a period of time until you like fully, deeply, utterly choose it, or you choose a different direction because you want less processing, more grace, more ease.
Yeah. 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 I don't even think it was necessarily a conscious intention. And I remember when I first met Oren, you know, people are like, "Oh, love at first sight." Like, it wasn't like that. When we met, I felt that he was special, and I could feel that I was intrigued by him. But I did not know that he was my partner for weeks. And it took me, even when we started connecting, I wasn't sure about him right away. Mostly because I had many men around me that were trying to court me and date me, and I was like, I don't know.
Which is amazing because you were in Kauai.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
is like kind of a thing in Kauai. The women are like, "Where are the men?" So abundance.
Yeah. Well, I created a whole intentional experience around that.
Will you share that?
Yes.
I love this story.
Yeah. So this is for all the women out there that if at any point, no matter where you are, because this is such a common story that gets pulsed through, it doesn't matter where you are. I hear it in LA, women say this to me, and I'm like,
yes. Yeah.
There's so many men here. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Where are the men?
I know it because I felt it in my heart. Like, am I going to meet my person here? And so in Kauai, very small island, it is one of the just densest, most thickest, and it is and has been such a thing for a long time there. There's an abundance of beautiful, lush, incredible women. I mean, they are just roaming everywhere. Everywhere. So many of our friends are there.
Yeah.
And the men, for a long time, the story has been there's not as many men. Like and you know, or if you meet somebody, he's already slept with many of your friends. Or it's just this kind of like very small community, very intimate. You kind of get a taste for like, this is what's existing here right now. And so similar around that time when I had my little journey with that, the crush that I had, I remember thinking, how am I going to even meet someone here? And I could feel myself starting to believe this story that was just circulating through the field. I was like, oh no. Because I had moved to Kauai with my previous partner. And so I could feel myself really feeling like I was going to believe it. And at one point I was like, no. This will not be my story. This is not going to be the thing that I give myself to. And for me, I think similar to you, I like to play with things. And so there's tons of roosters on Kauai. If you've ever been to Kauai, you know that there's just roosters roaming free everywhere, like the women. And every time a rooster would go off, which is about every 5 minutes, I would say, there's an abundance of conscious cock. There's an abundance of conscious cock. There's an abundance of conscious cock. And I would scream it and I would yell it and I would just like really be in the deliciousness of it. And it was so funny because all of a sudden, all these men started like coming to the island. Beautiful men just started coming, moving. It was like kind of in the thick of COVID. So a lot of people were like, ooh, Kauai is like a place that you can go right now. And I noticed how, and I really started also just affirming that there were kings surrounding me. And even if this man, there were many men that would surround me, and even if this man wasn't my partner, I was very much attuned to my nervous system is getting to experience what it feels like to be in the presence of a king. and to be around men who are supporting me and who are really holding a strong and beautiful field. And so I was really just like, how can I be a witness to as much as that's happening? And it was almost like men started to like circulate around me. It was wild. And yeah, so because of that, when I met Oren, I was like, you know, I had the thought. I was like, oh, you're a spiritual teacher that wants to fuck me. And I've been there. I'm good. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want that because I've already had that experience. And a lot of the men that were circulating around me, they were also just kind of like, you know, I could feel that. I could feel just a texture of like, oh, Chelsey's celibate and like, who is it going to be kind of vibe. I mean, maybe I was just playing that out in my own mind, but it felt that way.
Accurate. Yeah.
There was definitely a couple that I could feel they were like, you know, I can't wait to fuck you. And I was like,
that's the closest thing to a virgin we'll get.
Yeah, exactly.
Spiritual cock is coming for you.
Get her.
Abundance of conscious cock everywhere.
Yeah, it's right here. No, literally. Yeah, so when I met Oren, I was like, yeah, I really like you. And there was we went on a journey together. We met in Tulum. I was actually on a date with another guy that night that we met, and I was just intrigued by him. I could feel there was something special about him, but I didn't think I would ever see him again. And so he synchronistically came to Maui to work. He had a client fly him to Maui for an immersion, and then he flew over to Kauai because some of my friends are friends with him. And my roommate at the time was like, come over for dinner, come hang out with us. And so he came over, and yeah, there was this, you know, we were like having dinner together with 5 other women, and I was very much noticing, being around all these beautiful women, how he was very locked on me. Just, you can feel, you know, we're having dinner and he's just sitting across from me, full presence with me, and there's so many beautiful women around, and he's just like very, very clear. And at the end of dinner, he like feeds me some chocolate, and then we all sit around in a circle, and he's like, let's play a game. Let's say what we like about each other, what we love about each other. And I
love that he said that.
Yeah.
I love it. It's normally like, you know, one of your girlfriends. It's like, let's play a game, like trying to get something to happen. I love that he led that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we went around, and he looked at me and he was like, you are exquisite. And it like, something happened in my body when he said that to me, and all of the other women felt it. Like something shook inside my soul. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm paying attention. Something's happening here. And yeah, we went and had sunset like a couple days later, and we were out on the beach, and just, you know, we were out there for like 6 hours, watched the sunset, watched the moon rise, and had this really deep, beautiful, just connecting journey. And I remember we didn't kiss, but at one point we put our heads together and we were just breathing together, and I could feel this, like there was just like white light shooting through my system, and I was like, whoa, whatever is circulating between us is really powerful, and I've never felt like anything like this before, you know. But I was still also, I think one of the funniest things that was happening early on in our relationship is I was projecting onto him a little bit. I was like, oh, he's older than me, or he's a spiritual teacher that wants to fuck me, or I don't know. And every single time I would have a bad thought about him, I would project, I would hurt myself. I would fall, I would run into a wall, I would hit my head, I would stub my toe. And I was like, damn, like this man is like impenetrable in this field.
Yeah.
And it really, to the point, happened so many times that I was like, I'm fully projecting onto him right now. To be in the presence of someone that, and I think that was really important for me, was even after all this work that I'd done, I was like, oh, I'm still projecting onto the masculine. I'm still projecting onto him, but it's just bouncing back and hurting me, literally. So it was a really cool moment. And once I stopped doing that and allowed myself to really see him, he became so clear to me. And it was like he kept unveiling himself even more into who he was. And he kept showing himself, and he kept being more... It was like I got to peel back layers of him. He became more funny and playful and open and all these things. And when we made love, I was like, oh, okay, I see I understand now, like, what's been unfolding. Because I could feel his consistency and his persistence from day one with me, and I was just not fully in it with him. And I remember at one point, I was like, I'm celibate. I'm not going to do that. Like, just, you're going to have to wait. And he was like, girl, we've already been making love. And I was like, you're being cocky. You know, I was like, oh, I can't believe you just said that. And then when we made love, I was like, you were right. We were making love the whole time. So, yeah, I feel like and I always say this about Oren, he was just, and he has been consistently himself from day one. And he was consistent with me from day one, just choosing me. But even if I wasn't choosing him back, he was still so present and like holding that with me without contorting himself or losing himself. He was just like, I'm here. I'm here.
So hot.
It was so hot.
So hot.
I'd never experienced that before.
If any men are listening, this is delicious.
We like it.
We like it. I'm curious your thoughts on this as you're speaking. I'm thinking about, I'm sure you think about this too, the kind of dating and relationship world, particularly right now. Like she's open-hearted goddess, feminine, he's this, blah, blah, blah. I think we're kind of getting past the big upheaval of this, but still in many pockets, there is all this polarity conversation. And something that bothered me for years until I finally just have let it go is the kind of infantilizing, is that the right word? Infantilizing? Making infants out of women. And the amount of posts that I would see online, reels, videos, teachings from these women who were speaking about the feminine were really, and I will admit, I think at the beginning of me learning about all of this, I was part of it, and I saw it. I saw it pretty quickly, and I got out of it. But seeing how women will speak about themselves as wanting to be put in their place, wanting to find a man who won't tolerate their brat, who won't let them, you know, it's like speaking about ourselves, about we are buying into our own story. A lot of feminine beings are that we are to be put in our place, that we are infants, that our brat is something that it's like there's an encouragement to allow the leaky brat so that he can come and put you in your place. And like, this is the most wounded kind of dynamic ever. Like one of the top wounded dynamics, because it's keeping you as a woman in this story and this kind of spiral where your own life force is going back in on itself. There is a way to beautifully like be in your tender young one, to be in your sacred brat, you know, artistically, of course. But there is a completely different groupthink that I think is going on in the relationship world about like her brat must be tamed. And women are totally buying that and speaking about it and making it teachings. You know, learn how to be a better submissive instead of being the bratty brat that won't listen to him. And what I love about you and how I want to be and how I show up in relationship is there is a way to, like, you are such a great example of honoring your feminine without being an infant around it, without collapsing in on yourself for what you feel. Like just this moment where you were like, oh, that's cocky that he said that. And then saying, oh, actually, you're right. But there's a maturity in the way you're speaking about it. And I just know there's a maturity in the way that you were actually living that in the moment that it was happening. And that's a path for all women to take is, like is it being a brat or is it being cautious? And is it being aware? And are you choosing to be a brat or are you choosing to be conscious and aware? Right? And there's something that's been like, I don't know, fun or not quite sexy, but just, there's some kind of like siphoning. Siphoning is the word on ourselves to either want to be a brat or not be a brat. Okay, I'm done with the brat example.
No.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
I love this. It's such a nuanced conversation. And, you know, I will say that like I went through, because we've been in all the similar realms. And when I first met Oren, I was like really, I would say I was really holding myself in that. And one thing I love about him is that he's a reflector, and so he can feel and see everything, and he's just very gifted that way anyways. Like, but he didn't try to shape shift because of how I was responding. You know, it's like, I'm like, oh, you're being cocky. And he literally just held that with me. He didn't try to be like, oh, no, I'm sorry. He was just like, just smiling, like, I see what's happening, but I don't need you to be different.
Yeah, I don't need to put you in your place.
And that's been a big one for us that has anchored in through our entire relationship, is allowing the other person to be in whatever experience and expression they're having, while still allowing the other person to be in the experience and expression that they're having. And so we call that like the field of love holds it all, right?
Yes.
And it's important, because when we try to shape, as we know, like, we are shapeshifters, but when we try to shapeshift in a relationship, it creates these tiny little contortions and distortion that then impact everything else. And I did go through a season in our relationship because I was like, oh, I do want to be like this submissive housewife. And I think that was a kind of a thing that went through, because it was like, super powerful boss babe, we're doing it all. And then it was like this pendulum swing, and everyone's like, oh, I want to be this like submissive woman. And so I went through my own kind of like crumbling and obliteration in our relationship. And I was going through, I think, probably such a kind of dark night of the soul energy where I felt literally powerless. And so I was almost showing up in the relationship that way, kind of like, I don't know. What do you want? And at some point, I could just see it all. And Oren didn't respond to that. He didn't like that. When I'd come and be like, oh, can you do this thing for me? He'd be like, can you ask me in a different voice? He'd be like, I don't respond to that. I'm not going to even engage in you acting like an infant, what you're talking about, you know? And I just could see where my just kind of that shadowy essence of some of those teachings had infiltrated me a little bit. And I was like, oh, I need to be this soft, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for who I actually am as woman, I am really powerful, and I am really big, and I am really loud, and I do take up a lot of space. And I feel like one of the gifts of our relationship is it's not power over, power under, it's powerful together. And a lot of times that is Oren leading, but he wants me to be with him. He wants me to be in my power with him, and that's the woman that he fell in love with.
Oracle too.
Yeah.
It's like he goes to you.
Yeah.
He goes to you. And I love that story around him, like, not talking back to you when you're using the baby voice. I think we were talking about this in France.
Yeah.
Because I'll just share very briefly. I was sitting in circle with my teacher that I've been working with for a little less than a year. And it was my turn. I raised my hand to ask a question. And I asked a question. I don't remember what it was, but it was very high-pitched. And my teacher is an older man. So I said something like, so what am I TV? Or something like that. And then he looks at me and he goes, so what am I TV? And just mimicked me back. I was just like gutted, like, it was kind of, but it was exactly what I needed.
Oh yeah.
In that moment, him just looking at him, and he did this, he just did the shoulders and everything. And then, oh man, for the rest of the retreat, I was talking to him in different ways. So I was like, I have a question. So I was just trying to break through the barrier, making art out of it.
Yeah.
Where I would just, my question is for you.
Yeah.
And just trying to play and get a new somatic response.
Yeah.
Because what he was pointing out, which he didn't even need to teach or present this to me, he was just pointing out, this is what you do in the presence of a man.
Yeah.
This is what you do. And I'm not going to respond to it.
Yeah.
And so I have been tracking religiously me speaking with older men, or it's usually older men, to be quite honest. Just like the voice going up in pitch.
Yeah.
And like there's so much in that we don't have time to go into today, but
I don't know.
There's a shit ton in
We
there.
could do a whole podcast on this
There's
alone.
so much, just the ways we're packaging and contorting and being safe and manipulating, total manipulation in that. And I really respect a man who is quick enough to see that, like my teacher, like Oren, and to not respond to it, because what that tells me is that his body is an oracle. His body is able to feel that instantly, because that's not a mind thing of like, oh, she's using it's like his body was responding in that moment, and then because he's embodied, able to say no.
Yes. And even when you said that story, I could just hear the voices of the people who'd be like, what, he did that? Like your teacher did that? And it takes to me, being in true union in relationship or in mentorship is to really be able to facilitate exactly what's actually needed in the moment. And so for him to do that with you was like the thing that you needed.
Felt like the kindest act of love.
Yeah.
I hated him for a day.
Yeah.
I had so many is this my place? Fuck this. Why was he comparing me to other women? My voice is amazing. Other men like my voice, just like all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then, and he didn't cater to that either. I just had to go through my own thing. But then I was like, wow, this is the way I have been living my life and existing, and why.
Yeah.
Because, again, a whole host, but like feeling like I have to package the fullness of me, the deep voice, in order to make him feel comfortable, stay safe, be cute. Being cute. I never knew that being cute was such a thing. And like being cute is great, but not when it's unconsciously cute.
Right.
It's like you're choosing to be cute.
Performative cute.
Yeah, performative cute, unconscious cute, habitual cute. Those are the things we look at. Because that's so much of your energy is going to that you're not realizing that you could be harnessing, saving, and directing to an actually important place.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you're talking about this. It's like the nuanced goodness of these layers.
Yeah, I love being called out like that. Okay, so I can't believe we're coming up on time here. These things go by so quickly. Just my last like meaty question for you is around making art. I would love to hear any ways that you make art in your it could be your relationship, it could also be your business, just like as a leader, how you make art, any way that's alive for you in this moment, your artistry, your alchemization.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Oren actually is the one that opened up my artist. So I feel like I wouldn't even be expressing or creating in the way that I am in my business if it wasn't for him really calling that from me and opening that through me. And I feel like that's one of the gifts of a relationship when we're in those unions, is like it really is this continual becoming of inviting our gifts together. And so in the relationship, he was the first one to be like, oh, you should write me a poem. And I'm like, I don't write poetry. I don't even do that. I don't even, no way. I've never written a poem in my life. All of a sudden poems are pouring out of me about our love, and I'm like sharing that with him. And there's been moments also in our relationship where we've had there was a period where I was processing this. I could feel that I had contorted a little bit, and specifically around leaving Kauai, because when we were living there together, and then we started traveling. And when I went back to Kauai in January, I was like processing this grief, and I was feeling all this anger towards him. And I was like, like I left this beautiful island for you. Similar to you, I make art from it. And so I wrote him a poem, and I shared it with him, and I was like, this is how, and I was just sharing with him in the poem all of the ways that I'd contorted because I wanted his last name. I can't remember the poem off the top of my head, but it was so beautiful, and it was just, and the way he received it. And I know that that, like, I know that that's where we really resonate with each other, because I don't yell at Oren. We don't like fight a lot, but I will share my whole heart and soul with him and how I'm feeling about something. And in that moment, I'm like splaying myself open through a poem of how I feel like I've just contorted myself for him, and also wrote him many love poems. And so that's been a really beautiful gift. And he's really been like poetry, artistry, your voice, and that's poured into my business and in the way that I work. Like the only offer that I have right now that you were a guest speaker inside of is called Rapture, and it's our artistic master muse where we devote to the artist. And it's just this, like, for me, there's no other path. I'm like, I can't imagine my life without this. I feel like artistry is everything. And I would say one of the biggest things that's most alive and open for me is my voice, and really wanting to sing more. And I really want to record a spoken word album that's like prayer and poetry. And because I have so many poems now, which is hilarious. I just have so many poems and so many prayers. And yeah, so that's been a big one for me, is just like experiencing myself through my voice, which is it's funny that was the conversation, because it's always been this thing that's been the most exposing for me. And it's the thing also that's where so much of my liberation is existing inside of. So yeah, it's like business, relationship, everything feels like, how can I make this more artful? How can I pour myself into this or deliver this in a way? I've really been practicing with that, even online. If I have an important message to share, sometimes I'm like, can I just write a poem about this or do a dance or something different, weave it in a different way, instead of just, yes, get on and talk and share the oracle, but also, is there a different way that this wants to be offered?
Yeah, I mean, you are so gifted at that. You're so gifted at that, at creating art. And again, like, that's the follow, unfollow, because I'm like, oh, she gets it. She understands. She is making art online in her expression. And I love, recently you've been making more comedy, which I've been really enjoying watching, just like being playful. And like,
guess who inspired that one?
Yeah, that's been really fun, especially the ones with you and Oren, where you're kind of playing around with that.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with writing itself? Like, do you have, I always love knowing people who are artists, how they craft their sacred time. Like, are you constantly thinking about ideas and then, like, in the moment you pause and you just let the channel go through? Do you carve out artist dates? Do you have a routine, like a structured routine, or is it really flowy?
I've done my best to do like morning pages or like writing in the morning, and I just find that it might be my design. I'm a manifesting generator, and so it's like I just have to do whatever I want to do in the moment, and sometimes that's really not writing. I find that if I give myself to whatever I want to do, whether that's dance or have tea or go on a hike, then the energy starts flowing, and all of a sudden the writing comes through. Almost every single time when I sit down to write, it takes me more energy. I can get there, but I like to get into whatever muse I might be moving towards, and then the writing comes. The ideas flow when I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
And I've just tracked that so often. It's like so many times when I'm out in nature or hiking, then the ideas come and I, pull my phone out, notepad, get it down a little bit. But every now and then Oren and I will have like poetry dates or artist dates, and those, it's funny because it takes me like probably 30 minutes to really anchor into the channel, and he's like ready. Oren's like artist on tap, spirit on tap, and so
he does like spoken word, right?
Yeah,
like just on the fly.
Oh yeah, he freestyles. Oren's like, he'll just be freestyling around the house all day. Like if you ever come stay with us, he'll just be like freestyling all day in the background. It's so funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's his pathway. That's like his way of liberation through creation. So that when he gets on a mic or he's ready, he can just drop a spoken word or something really powerful because he's like already in that. And I've noticed for me, I have to sink into it. But then once I'm there, I'm there. Yeah.
I'm very similar. Yeah, I don't sit. It's funny when I've like had tea recently and I pulled out my journal and I was like, I'm having tea. I'm doing a tea ceremony. I'm going to write a haiku. I'm going to write a poem. And it's just shit. Just shit. It's like it's the worst. And I'm okay. I'm done with that activity now.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like when I'm hanging out with friends, actually, is where most of my inspiration comes from.
Yeah.
Like when I hear the funny things my friends say in passing, or we have a conversation and it just sparks something, Sometimes I get good ideas when I'm actually taking in inspiration from other people's art,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's my own. That's totally different. But like, I do like to be in the vortex of TikTok sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I'm just seeing what I love so much about TikTok is how it shows how creative the average Joe can be. Because it's just all normal people. Like, they don't have, maybe they get to create massive accounts, but they're just making stuff.
I love it. I love it.
And it's so funny. And it brings me a lot of hope in humanity and the artistry that we're capable of creating, and particularly how silly we can be, because I find that the gram is a little bit more like everyone's trying to share their message.
Yeah.
Whereas TikTok is like just stupid.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just stupid. It's just people like being silly. Of course, like there's the occasional, you know, narc talk, like education on narcissism or the relationship talk. But mostly it's people doing really ridiculous things.
Yeah.
I have to show you something later.
Yeah, please show me.
It's just, yeah.
Wait, do you have a TikTok?
I have one, yeah.
Do you use it?
Not really, no. When I started growing my Instagram through all my comedy, I started TikTok at the same time, and I grew like 30K in a short period of time. And then people just been dropping off. Like,
Right.
Yeah, I don't really keep up with it. It doesn't feel like it's my particular place.
It's like it's kind of quite a different. I mean, I've never really tried to grow my TikTok, but it's like Instagram and TikTok are different. Like what you're saying,
they're different. And I did like a few clients found me through that, which I thought was awesome. Like people that wouldn't have found me otherwise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if people are interested in that. I think it's a good platform, but it's much easier, I think, to just focus on one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But TikTok's like your inspo. Go get like a funny.
Oh my gosh, it's just, if I'm watching a show, sometimes I'm like, I would much rather be absorbing creative, ridiculous content right
Yeah, no, literally.
And laughing.
I had that thought recently. And like, if you ever go through Oren and I's DMs, like on Instagram, it's just funny. We were just literally sending funny videos to each other all day. I'm like, here's another one. And he'll send me one. It's like all videos.
I love
in
that.
our DMs on Instagram. So we love that.
Have you seen the trend right now of making your husband do an interpretive dance so he can sleep with you?
No.
Oh my God. You and Oren have to do it.
Okay, I will.
It's a trend where it just shows the man doing, it's like one song and then the man's dancing an interpretive dance so that he can sleep with her that night. Yeah, it's so funny. You got to get on it while it's hot.
I'm going to do it. Okay, we'll do it. I'm going to be home tonight. I love that. Thank you for that idea.
Okay, just a couple quick fire questions as we close this incredible conversation. I'm so happy. I love you so much. I'm so happy you're here. I'm just going to make these up based off of questions that I've already asked before. Based off of the ones I've already said before, probably many times. Okay, one of my favorite questions ever. If your sex life was an animal, what animal would it be?
Oh, jaguar.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a cat all the way.
Yeah. Jaguar energy. You're Jaguar woman. It's your
Mm-hmm.
song.
Oh, yeah.
Can I say that? It's secret, right?
I haven't. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I haven't dropped it yet. I have a song called Jaguar.
Yeah. It's so nice. Your voice is going to be boop. If you could co-write a book with anybody in the entire world, dead or alive, who would you want to go through that creative process of co-writing a book with?
Oh. It's funny because when you said it, I thought you immediately, which just, I mean, obviously I'm just loving the like dialogue and dynamic between us. So like close friend, you. I feel like I would also write a book with Oren, and we will write a book together.
Aww, I love that. I'm so honored. Yeah. I'm so honored.
I just like
wow. I would love to write a book with you someday.
I feel like there's some kind of collaboration or co-creation that wants to happen between us. Some kind of youth baby will be coming.
I think so too.
To life.
That would be really exquisite if we did like a retreat together.
I feel like an experience or something. Yeah.
I like this question too. If love, if eros was a flavor of any kind, what would it be?
Ooh.
Eros personified through taste.
I feel like I feel very turned on when I eat so much of the time, but I'm getting this like texture of like salty, sweet, like dripping kind of honey. Actually, I was eating truffle honey last night and it was really good. So that's probably what I'm feeling. It's like a different, like, it's not just sweet because it's like very full flavored, but.
What about like those little bites of dates with bacon and goat cheese in them?
It's like savory and sweet. Yeah, that drizzled in truffle honey.
With a little bit of sea salt. And yeah, that sounds like eros. What deity do you feel the most connected to?
Maybe you can help me with that because I feel like I know that you love Dionysus.
I do.
I feel like do we consider Mary Magdalene a deity?
Yeah. She's living, but yes, I would consider her.
Yeah, I would say just in this year, I mean, that's why we went to France together. I'd never felt connected to her, but recently that's probably the only when I feel like something that I'm connected to that. And I went through like a whole chapter where I was really connecting to different like goddesses and deities and like all these things. And I think you're reminding me that I need to like get back into that.
It's so much of my life.
I love that. Yeah.
Krishna, Radha, Brahma, Vishnu, Hecate, Lilith, Magdalene, Joan of Arc. She's not a deity, but I like to consider her a deity.
Yeah, I went through like a whole dark goddess, like Inanna for a really long time. I was like just in it with the dark goddesses.
Love the dark goddesses. Yeah. I love to chant every deity's name that I can think of with my drum. I will just sit down and I will just chant every single name. And before I lead any kind of big thing, like an event or workshop, I will just sit by the fire and I will just talk to every single deity on my team and I will ask them for support. They're very specific flavors of support, like the ways that they support and how to hold the group and like also honoring each one of them for what I love about them and then asking for them to...
I love that.
It's so deity, #deity life. Forever.
I love that.
Forever and ever. It's really, it's really deep into my life and my practice.
Okay. So we're
I'll fill into some deities for you.
Yeah, tell me. I went through like, I haven't worked with Krishna. I went through like a Lakshmi phase and I was really working with abundance. And
there's a deity in the Hindu tradition, a Mahavidya called Matangi. And I love Matangi. She is like green skinned. She doesn't really look like Kali, but you might mistake her for Kali. But her thing is that she takes your leftovers and she wants you to come to her impure. So whereas all of the other deities, for the most part, are like, come to my temple with clean hands, clean feet, don't have sex, don't bring leftover food, bring fresh food, fresh banana.
Don't bring dried flour.
Matangi's like, come while you're bleeding, come after sex. Bring me your leftovers. Anything that would be deemed impure, she's like, that's what I consume. That's what I eat. That's what I want. And she's so powerful.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. It's a great reminder that there's a deity and there's a spirit that will consume anything. One of the things, I'm straying into the whole thing, but one of the things that I will tell my students is that there are deities that will consume anything you don't want. So your grief, there is a energy or an entity or a deity that will come want to eat your grief.
Wow.
Or your anger or your rage or your shame or your guilt. Like there's a spirit that feasts on that.
Wow.
Quite literally. So you always have that support.
Who's the shame one?
Well, I don't know their names. I don't know who they are. But like,
just call.
That's how many entities we have.
Right. Yeah.
I learned that from my teacher, Josh. He's like, an animist and talks about how whatever it is that you have, across the board, there are energies and entities that will consume anything. And you don't have to know their name. You don't have to know who they are. You don't have to pray specifically to them in their name. You speak to them, the energy, and then they come and they will be able to take that and recycle it for you.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
I didn't know that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, last question, the most important one. Pancakes or waffles?
Oh, shit, girl.
Oh. I know it's the hardest.
Like when I was a child, and for the longest time waffles, but lately it's been pancakes. I've just been making the best pancakes, you know?
Yeah. I love pancakes.
Yeah, pancakes have been more my thing, which is so wild because for most of my life I was like, no, I want waffles.
Yeah. You've matured. You've deepened. You've become a pancake woman. Chelsey, thank you so much for coming on. So like beautiful to hear your story and your love and to receive your transmission and your energy. It's an honor.
I love you.
I love you.
You're one of the most incredible souls in the world. Thank you for giving yourself entirely to all that you are, to your work, to your creation. I feel you as a really, really deep and fully playful woman. Like you are playing with life. And I respect that so much. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
I love you.
I'm so glad that we got brought together.
I know, me too. I love you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the podcast and for tuning in and listening. If you resonated with this, if you enjoyed it, we would be so deeply honored to have a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify with details. What did you like about it? What like revs you up? What excites you? We'd love to know. And we will include on the show notes to this how to connect with Chelsey, as well as my free gift, 50 ways to be creative in love.
Ooh.
It's a list of 50 ways to be creative in love. I worked on it for a year. So if you're really excited by the idea of being creative in love, you can get that. And then also on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, we have Artist of Love, my book.
Oh, I have this book.
You do? I love that. I love that so much. Yay, yay. If you want to be an artist of love, you can get that on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And we are now officially back on with the podcast, so you can expect an episode every other week. And next week, I plan to do a solo one. I will be going deep into some of the things that have been shape-shifting in my life recently. It's going to be a big one. I'm excited to tune in for that. And in the meantime, sending you all so much love. Thank you for being here.